swirling.com, and I'm here with my dear friend and fellow astrologer, Christina Rodenbeck from oxfordastrologer.com. And we're here to talk to you about astrology, what's been, what is, what's coming. And do please check out our websites as well, because we both do. I do weekly horoscopes. Christina does monthly horoscopes, and you can sign up for those on a subscription service. And they're fantastic to read as well. But here we are talking about astrology. Exciting month coming up, hey, Christina? And an exciting month it's been, actually. It all seems exciting.
Yeah, well, we're going into eclipse season, aren't we? And that's always fascinating, and there's stuff happening. Yeah, how was your, let's do a little bit of retrodiction, Sally, shall we?
Oh, yes.
How have you been in the past 4 weeks?
Well, I've really noticed, I mean, Aries ascendant, I've really noticed that Jupiter, it's been quite full on. I'm constantly, really busy, social, chasing my tail, lots happening, kind of that Jupiter expansiveness. So it's been great, but I'm actually hoping for a bit of a quieter time. Maybe we'll get that this coming month with Mercury retrograde as well. Well, I don't know. But yeah, I'm very aware of that Jupiter. It's kind of like, really, really busy. And the other thing I really noticed, particularly with clients and friends, was when Pluto moved into Aquarius, which was right at the beginning. I mean, it was March 23rd. So it was kind of the beginning of Aries month. There were a lot of breakups or things coming to an end around then, which I thought was actually quite interesting, as Pluto represents endings. Not necessarily as well with Pluto triggering people's charts, but just this theme of relationships coming to an end, jobs ending unexpectedly. So I thought that was quite interesting as well from, last month. How about you? It's been a bit different for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I have been really, really digging down and rooting myself and actually having a really great time. And I'm assuming it's Saturn in Pisces. Can't say that Saturn in Pisces last time around was any good for me. I had a horrible my first the first time that happened, which was years ago, 28 years ago. But this time it's good because I'm a super Pisces, as everybody knows. I have many, many planets in Pisces. And I'm finding Saturn in Pisces incredibly grounding. I've been doing a lot of gardening. And I've also done a lot of religious stuff of various religions. So, we had Passover. I went to did the Eucharist at the cathedral here, which was fantastic. Because of course there's the most incredible choir, and they all have the gold outfits on, and it's a sung Eucharist, so it's incredibly beautiful and powerful service. And also I have my shamanic clan gathering. I had that as well all in the last week, so it's been holy. I've been doing a lot of religious style things, and I feel that's very Saturn in Pisces. But also I have to admit, I have been watching this AI thing with great interest. ChatGPT, the response. I don't know if you've seen, there's been this petition calling for a moratorium on AI by top Silicon, people who know about this stuff, who are saying it's incredibly dangerous. What are we doing? And I felt, wow, that is Pluto and Aquarius. Saying this is actually, we don't know what we're doing with this. And because AI means it's something that teaches itself. So it's going to be smarter than us very soon. So I've actually been experimenting a little bit with ChatGPT. And actually finding it hilarious, which is also kind of worrying. Well, because you can ask it to write something, and that we asked it to write a description of the coronation and why Prince Charles would be using astrology in the manner of the Sun newspaper.
Okay.
Mentioning Camilla Parker Bowles' aromatherapy and Meghan Markle's ankles. And it did most brilliant job.
Yeah.
I mean, fantastic. I did think all hack journalists, these people who write these awful columns complaining about, it's outrageous that Charles is using astrology. Um, it had the language perfectly for
Yeah.
this. It
Yeah.
did it really well. I thought, oh, hack journalists out of a job. You just need to write in the theme and there it'll produce the column for you.
Yeah.
But it's worrying that it starts funny because often scary things start hilarious,
Yeah.
don't they? I mean, Hitler was laughed at, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So so I'm watching that with great interest and thinking it's interesting that Pluto goes back into Capricorn in June. If they get their moratorium, will it start in June and go on till when Pluto goes back into Aquarius in January? I personally can't see what difference that's going to make because A, you're not going to be able to get a moratorium across the planet. People won't agree. And B, we need to start thinking about it now, putting stuff in now.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. They're really interesting timing, isn't it?
It's perfect timing. I mean,
Pluto-
absolutely
Pluto's in it.
perfect timing.
Because AI has been, I mean, it's been going for ages, but Chat GPT and, the sort of artificial intelligence, people have been sort of working with it, using it since the end of last year more. I think it's been more in the public eye. So for Pluto to come into Aquarius and say, hang on a minute, how dangerous is this? I mean, this is a side of Pluto, isn't it? The danger side. So I think it's great timing.
Yeah. I mean, it is really dangerous. That's the thing I hadn't quite kind of grasped until Pluto came into Aquarius.
Yeah.
But it's actually, there's a whole bunch of stuff about this that we need to consider. Ethics, basically. We need to talk about ethics. And I think that Pluto, that's also interesting that Saturn is in Pisces with this discussion of ethics. Yeah. And Pluto is sort of the anti-ethics planet. But Pluto has no ethics. It's not about ethics.
Yeah.
When we talk about ethics, we're talking Jupiter, Saturn stuff.
Yeah.
And Saturn in Pisces is talking about ethics on a very, very, very big scale. It's about religious ethics, or ethics for everybody. And yes, so I've been a very fascinating month. I'm really enjoying it. I've been really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the fact that I feel that the Saturn in Pisces has raised the discourse a little bit away from how did Boris Johnson blow his nose to how are we really thinking about the structure of our society and of our philosophy, it's raised it to a more philosophical level as sort of public discourse.
Interesting. Well, let's hope it progresses like that.
Yeah. Sorry, cynical laugh there. Maybe it's my own private public, my projection of what's happening, probably. But yes. So we're going into Taurus month.
We are, and it's always a lovely month, isn't it? Particularly, Northern Hemisphere, it's abundance, produce, things growing. And yeah, let's hope that, I mean, it's been dreadful weather here in the UK. Oh, blimey. I mean, winds, rain, spring just hasn't really got going. So I suspect, the sun's move into Taurus will start to bring the better weather. And also often when Mercury turns retrograde, which it will be doing in Taurus, that often shifts the weather in some way. It's very linked to the weather. You often get extreme weather. So maybe we'll leap into a really sort of abundant and sunny month ahead, which and we can be outside in nature, in the garden, getting things growing. So yeah, so I mean, it's always a nice season, Taurus season, isn't it? In that sense.
And weirdly, I mean, it's actually, the weather's been sort of interesting and okay here. I know it's been different on the south where you are. Yeah. This is a tiny country. The weather can be completely different on one side of the South Downs and of the North Downs, which are the chain of hills, and the other side. So it's been windy and rainy, but also very sunny and incredibly beautiful. And I think spring is slightly more advanced here. We're fully flowering. So I've been in the garden already. So I hope it spreads to you.
Thank
So
you. Yes, I've not been swimming in the sea yet. So it's, that's what I want as well in Taurus season. To be out walking, to be in the sea, to be in nature. I mean, it's a perfect time. And slowing down a bit. I've found this Jupiter in Aries very frenetic. So moving into a new season, I want some of that. Right, let's kind of feel more grounded, more settled. And I'm hoping that's coming as well. Although change is on the way too.
yes, I mean, it's quite a month ahead, isn't it, that we've got. But before we get there, do we want to say anything about Taurians in general? Because we often sort of sing the praises at this time.
Well, I mean, I was thinking who's in the news at the moment. I mean, the only one that always springs to mind and is the blooming Queen. I know she's not even around anymore, but of course you can't help but think of her because it's the coronation coming this month as well. And she was just the classic Taurus. I mean, that the longevity side of Taurus, fixed earth, going. I mean, that long reign as queen and all her love of, corgis, horses, nature. I mean, she couldn't have been, I think, a more classic Taurus, and quite stubborn as well. Quite a rigid character as well, the Queen. So she's always, I was thinking, right, who's in the news, Taurus? I mean, can you think of anyone in the news, Taurus? Or maybe they're about to leap into the news when Jupiter moves into it.
I think we're going to have a lot of Taurians in the news in the next year.
Yeah.
I always think, because I think of the George Clooney and
he's another classic. I always think of George Clooney.
I think of George Clooney in the morning. Yeah. Tony Blair, of course, is Taurus.
Yeah.
A sun Taurus. His birthday same day as this coming coronation. That's interesting timing. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a family affair. My child is a Taurus.
Yes.
And has all the many of the classic Taurus characteristics of being a delight and a great beauty, and also stubborn, persistent, hardworking. It's a great sign. It's the fixed earth sign, so I do feel that it, without Taurus, would we all be floating off in a daze? It's a sign that really holds the zodiac in a way, like all the fixed signs. It pins the thing down, but Taurus more than anybody else. It reminds us that we are connected to the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes us back to basics, doesn't it? I always think, whenever I talk with Taurians, it's kind of financial, emotional security. It's just the basics of life. Get those in place, get a safe base, and then grow from there. And also beauty, I mean, it's ruled by Venus, one of the 2 star signs ruled by Venus. I was going to say very beautiful. I mean, Taurians can be incredibly beautiful. And beauty's that takes us out into nature and the world as well.
It's a flower. It's a sign in the northern hemisphere. This is the sign of the flowering. This is the moment. May is the month when this, not just this country, but across the northern hemisphere, and quite far south as well, the flowers come, and we understand that we are living in great beauty if you go down into nature.
Yeah, beautiful world. So should we start having a look at what's going on in this very intriguing and interesting month ahead? And we're probably going to start with a solar eclipse in Aries, actually. It's kind of Aries and Taurus are really they're not moving over in a definitive way, are they, at the moment? This kind of Aries is being dragged into Taurus season, and it's kind of not letting go quite, with Jupiter in Aries until the middle of May, and then the solar eclipse in Aries right at the end of the star sign, almost kind of pulling itself into Taurus season. I think the sun changes sign and moves into Taurus only 4 hours after the eclipse on the 20th of April, which is quite incredible timing, isn't it? It couldn't be more at the end of Aries, this eclipse.
Yeah. And is it the first one that we're having in this series?
It is. It is. It's the first eclipse. Are you going to put the eclipse up?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just a bit distracted.
Yeah, it's the first eclipse in a new cycle, Aries Libra, falling across the Aries Libra axis. It starts now, April 2023. It will run till March 2025. And I think what's particularly interesting about this eclipse cycle is that apart from one, they're all solar eclipses. So the new moon eclipses. Sometimes that's the other way around and you get more lunar or full moon eclipses, but they're solar. So they're these kind of power points of energy. I mean, solar eclipses can be about new beginnings, things starting, but usually, because this is eclipse law in a way, usually after an ending. And interesting that this eclipse coming up on the 20th of April is at 2950 Aries. I mean, literally right at the end of the star sign. So there's this obvious theme of endings and new beginnings with it. And also, just to kind of back that theme up, it's square to Pluto in a dissociate aspect, isn't it? The sun makes the square to Pluto just as it moves into Taurus a few hours after the eclipse. So it's really powerful astrology, this. I mean, what do you make of it? Do you like it? Do you kind of fear it? What's your take?
What I would say about it is the following, that it is, as you say, beginnings and endings. I think it's incredibly powerful because of its placement in this particular degree. Whenever you have anything in the 29th degree or the 0 degree in a sign, it gives it much more welly, it gives it more impact. So it's sort of an eclipse squared. And the fact that it's squaring Pluto is really, really important because Pluto's just dipped into Aquarius, and in about 8 days, it's going to 10 days, it's going to go retrograde and start going backing out of Aquarius. So basically, and also, actually, the sun, it's like this eclipse is almost straddles Aries and Taurus, really, because it starts in Aries, but it's just it finishes off and then it's straight into Taurus. So again, we have this kind of shaking of this fixed axis, it's like it blasts into Taurus. Do I like it or dislike it? I mean, it makes it, because of the conjunction to Jupiter, it's empowered again. So for anybody, for Aries, for example, this is huge. It's a huge shift. It's a huge change. If you have any planets around that end of Aries, beginning of Taurus, there's something's going to happen. It may be just letting go of some idea, but I think it's an incredible eclipse for just allowing stuff to finish, allowing stuff to end. And I have noticed already, we're recording this on a few days before, obviously, because we publish on the 18th. But I've noticed that already since the 6th of April, since the last full moon, that loads of stuff has been happening that is eclipsy, that's endings, is to do with endings. People are dropping things. People are having to make very big decisions, which is a tricky thing to do on an eclipse, but sometimes you're forced into it. That we're already in the vortex, we're already being pulled into the energy of this eclipse now. And I find that quite interesting because that doesn't always happen. Not every eclipse has got this much power behind it, but this has got I'm feeling like it's got a huge sucking power, and like we're all swirling around I want to say the drain, but that maybe there's a better way of putting that. The other thing is, the actual North Node, this is a North Node eclipse, not a South Node eclipse, but the actual North Node is still in Taurus. So we've got the eclipse happening in Aries, but the node itself is in Taurus. And the reason it's a total eclipse is because it's really close to that node.
It's actually, I mean, I was reading up about it in one of the astronomy websites. It's what's called a hybrid eclipse, this one coming up, which is quite unusual. They only happen once a decade. And it means that depending where you are in the world, it will look different. You can get a total, an annular, or a partial eclipse, and then you see things differently. Like the total, the moon blocks the sun. Annular, the moon is slightly within the sun. Partial, you get that kind of little smile of the sun. And this is going to be a hybrid eclipse, so it depends where you are, what it's going to look like. I think it'll either be annular or total. But I thought that's quite interesting as well, because for me, there's something about this eclipse that maybe it is about being able to change your perspective on something. If you look at a situation from a different way, maybe that gives you insights and enables you to move on. I think this eclipse is so much about moving on. I mean, for Libra, relationship, what relationship do you need to leave behind or move on from? So yeah, think about this eclipse as how can I shift my perspective to make the right moves moving forward. And I think also, you know, when we get these new eclipse cycles starting, this is moving into the cardinal signs. And I often find these eclipses are more powerful for the cardinal signs, or the mode of the star sign that they're in. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you know, this is the big areas of life. It's you, the other person, it's you, relationships, or it's past, future, home, work. So for the cardinal signs as well, I think this is a really powerful eclipse to kind of focus on and to use in some way, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that, for example, Cancer, this is a big eclipse for Cancerians, especially if you were born into the end of the sign. It could be something to do with your parents or your job. These are major, major things in your life. There's something that's going to change. Someone's going to come, someone's going to go. And the same is true, you know, for, actually, I was thinking, it's interesting for Capricorn, you know, something in the foundations of your life is changing. But also because it slides between Aries and Taurus, you know, you could say for Capricorn, but also for Aquarius, something at the foot of your life is changing. And it's for Cancer, but also for Leo, something at the top of your life is changing. I think for a lot of people who have been going through changes that have been to do with this series of eclipses that we've had in Taurus, Scorpio. So that's the last 18 months. So wherever those changes have been taking place, this may be the final end of that changing phase as well. So there's one lot of people for whom this is the beginning of a whole changing phase, and another lot for whom it's the end. And for the fixed signs, that is Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, you're going to have one more fixed eclipse, but by then the nodes will have moved into a different, will have moved into Aries and Libra. So this is the big one. This is the big full stop, the ending of that process of change that you've been going through for 18 months. And it's somehow it's got fireworks, it's got, but it's like it's explosive, you know. There's something about this eclipse that is very dramatic. I feel. I'm actually thinking also about, you know, some people are like just finishing their exam, starting their exam season here, you know, and so that's university people at university and people at school are starting that season of finishing off the academic year. You know, you're into that, you know, the bit where you really have to power through and really get your head down. I find that quite interesting that it's starting with this eclipse, right? That's it, finished. This is the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, you know, just when you're talking about the Taurus Scorpio eclipses, which we're going to be looking at one, but the final one's at 5 degrees. It's a lunar eclipse cutting across 5 degrees Taurus, 5 degrees Scorpio. So the North Node is kind of triggering that now.
Yeah.
So I do think, yeah, as you say, that cycle is completing now. But for me, with this, you know, the new moon solar eclipse in Aries as well, it's about courage. It's about being brave enough to bring something to an end so you can have new beginnings in another area.
And it may be time to drop something. I mean, if there's something that you've been hanging on to, thinking, oh, this is going to resolve, this is going to work out, I'm going to hang on to it. I mean, for Libra, this would be like a relationship, right? maybe the moment to think, actually, it may never resolve. I better just, it's better for me just to drop this thing and
Mm,
move on. You know,
yeah,
I had the experience, and the experience was the thing.
yeah,
Um, you know, and um, you know, obviously that'll be different depending on where this ends, um, where it falls for you, rather.
mm,
Um, so you know, it's for say some say Pisces, for instance, you know, this could be something to do with a way of earning money that finishes. You
yeah,
know, you're not going to be earning money like that anymore. You need to move on.
yeah. And the same for Virgo, I would say as well. You know, it's the money access. So it could apply to Virgo as well. So yeah, it's about where it falls um, in your horoscope.
Mm. I'm being brave enough to let go of something um big as well. So this is not like some minor, like I'm letting go, I'm, you know, I'm changing my shoes.
Yeah.
Right? This is a big thing that you might want to let go of, because actually it's also blocking.
Yeah. And I think from, you know, the other thing with eclipses is that, I mean, as you're listening to this on the podcast, you might not be that aware of what this is about for you. But I think with eclipses, you know, they do bring what's hidden to light. So they're often involved with external events, things that happen that are these turning points or signposts in life. So as well, really listen out and watch for what's going on or around this eclipse, because you might get a sign or guidance about what this is about as well.
And you probably already are. I mean, as we're, because there's this, the thing about eclipse season is that there is this run up to it. And you know, a lot of astrologers, me included, would say that, you know, the eclipses then may have some kind of effect over the following 6 months. But there's definitely this powerful pull into an eclipse season that begins 2 weeks beforehand, really, you
Yeah.
know, from that, the previous lunation, and then carries on into the 2 weeks afterwards.
Mm.
So we have the eclipse coming on the 20th, then we have the next eclipse on the 5th, and
Okay.
then there's the 2 weeks after that, and that is the eclipse season. So these 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks afterwards. So it's a quite a long period. It's a 6 weeks period. And so pay attention during that time. So you have this a pair, the pair of eclipse, the eclipses come together. You know, you should always think of them as a pair rather than just a one-off.
Yeah.
And that space between the eclipses is really important too. That time between the 2 weeks in between the eclipses, and that particularly pay attention then of what's going.
Yes.
But then the next thing is sometimes the second eclipse is what's coming in.
Okay. And also, I mean, there's, you know, because traditionally you say an eclipse, wait for a couple of days, see what comes to light, then make a decision. So eclipses aren't necessarily great dates to kind of choose to take action, be decisive, start something new. But what's interesting about this eclipse is that Mercury turns retrograde the day after it, on Friday the 21st. And if you're looking at the chart, you can see Mercury at 15 Taurus. It's almost getting to Uranus again, this theme of spontaneity, being impulsive, but then pulls back, turns retrograde, and it will go back to 5 degrees Taurus. Again, that degree of where the North Node is, where the eclipse is coming in October. So there's some kind of pattern playing out. And with Mercury being retrograde from April 21st to May 15th, you know, this is whatever takes place on or around this eclipse on 20th of April, it's probably wise to let it bed in, let it settle, take your time before rushing into anything new. It's a really kind of fine line to walk, I think, during this eclipse season. But that Mercury in retrograde, you know, there's and interesting too, Mercury retrograde, often there's a hidden theme. Things come to light when Mercury turns direct. Eclipses, again, hidden theme. So there are things that you may not understand, you may not be able to get to grips with, you may want to review, reassess, and then things really leap out, start moving mid-May. So it's this really interesting kind of period going on.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's about bedding down, because I think it's like almost like you might look into the you might find there's no bottom.
Mhm.
You know, you look into the hole or whatever, and you see, oh, wait a second, there is actually no bottom to that hole.
Mhm.
So I would be very cautious, actually, about looking over. You know, you're looking over the edge of something, right?
Mhm.
Shall we talk about the coronation? Because I think this is absolutely fascinating that the coronation of Charles III is happening in the midst of this tumultuous, this season of uncertainty, I would say. And I actually, the idea of uncertainty is the feeling of uncertainty, not knowing the future, hasn't been so powerful in a long time. I mean, we've been a decade or so ago, the future seemed to be more certain, but we've been becoming into increasingly uncertain times as the years have gone on. And
Mhm.
this is a moment of great uncertainty, I would say.
Yeah, and I just want to sort of pick up on, before we sort of leap into the coronation, on a personal level, I think that's really important with this month coming up.
Mm.
You know, with this Mercury retrograde, it feels like a really powerful Mercury retrograde. And I think it is about, it's okay not to know. It's okay to be unsure. It's okay to feel unsettled. It's okay to kind of wait.
And it's okay to pull back from the brink.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you've got people who are saying you have to go forward. Forward is the only way because blah blah blah. Don't pull back from the brink. And it's interesting that they're talking about this AI moratorium. Back to that, you know, which is Uranus, of course, is connected to AI and computers, etc. And Mercury goes retrograde just before that.
Mm,
So we'll see what happens.
mm,
But I
mm.
would say it's a great time to pull back from the brink of making a really huge decision.
Yeah, and particularly I think for the fixed star signs with this as well. I mean, Leo, it's in your career sector, Taurus, personal sector, Scorpio, relationship sector, Aquarius, home, family sector, past.
I
So
mean,
for
Leo,
those
you
signs.
sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. But Leo, you can change your mind about your career, for example,
Mm,
during this period. You don't have to power forward. You can change your mind about, what your next move is and actually just wait.
yeah, just wait, because also Jupiter moves into Taurus mid-May. So that's when the prize comes. That's when, the right move, the time to make the right move comes. So it really, there's this theme of sort of holding back and waiting. So I just wanted to kind of add that in before
Yeah.
we get to Charles and his coronation, which is incredibly fascinating timing, isn't it?
I mean,
Um,
yeah, it's shall I put Charles's coronation up? Would you like
Yeah,
that? Or
yeah,
shall I
put the
put
coronation
Charles up?
chart up, because this falls after the eclipse there's an eclipse on May the 5th, which is at 14 Scorpio. So part of this Taurus Scorpio cycle, which is coming to an end this year. And May the 6th, May 5th, May 6th are often dates that, I know Beltane is traditionally May 1st, May Day, but May 5th and 6th is actually the period that's halfway between the equinox and the solstice. So it's seen as real sort of deep midsummer. And it's also, I was listening to a lecture, really fascinating, talking about the significance of the 6th of May and how in many countries around the world, that is actually St. George's Day, because of the two different calendars, Julian calendar, Gregorian calendar. But more importantly, there's a lot of significance of the color green and its relationship with the green man. And I mean, that has been, I don't know if anyone's heard about what's happening with the invitation.
I will actually put the invitation up on the screen as well, because it's so fantastic, actually, in my opinion.
Rich. It's so richly, it's such Taurus, isn't it? It's such a Taurus invitation. There's been controversy because the green man is on the invitation to the coronation. So, it's saying, oh, this is a symbol of paganism, and this shouldn't be on this event. There's been quite a lot going on about it. It was fascinating to read. I mean, absolute. Well, this is what Prince Charles represents, isn't it? He's bringing something different, something new. He's always been known for his woo-woo, for his interest in, metaphysics, the sacred, nature, his love of nature, and his nature, that mix between nature and paganism.
There you go.
Yeah, isn't that? I mean, for those of you who are looking in on the video, it's absolutely stunning. It's full of flowers and green, and the green man at the bottom. It's this gorgeous invitation. So if you're not looking on the video, do go and check it out.
Yeah.
I think it's a really strong statement for his coronation.
It's fantastic. So basically, it's got the green man being crowned at the bottom, with the crown, with the acorn on his head, with oak leaves coming out of his mouth, and it's covered in beautiful flowers and beautiful. It's like an illuminated thing, like an illuminated manuscript with all the flowers of this country, the wildflowers of this country, violets and daffodils and wild roses. And an interesting, is that a blue boar? There's a blue boar in the bottom left-hand corner. I mean, it is full of symbolism. It's the thing that you probably know about Charles already, but the thing to emphasize is this is a person who has lived a life where he has been, we know that he's very interested in sacred geometry, that he is as an astrologer, that he is interested in the symbolism and what it means to be the symbolic meaning of kingship, not just the actual, wearing the bling, but the symbolic meaning. And it means, I would suggest that this green man he's talking about his role as protector of the islands, protector of this country, and protector of the nature of this country, because he's been an environmentalist since the 70s. All of his many vast holdings, vast estates are organic, they're not, and they are, he's always made this attempts to be organic, to bring on the green agenda here. And he may not have been able to, he's not going to be able to influence policy, because that's not how he's not that kind of king, but he can influence the feeling. And I think that he has quite, as a Scorpio, he has quite a deep understanding of the mystical power of kingship. And that's what this invitation is about. It's about the mysticism.
Yeah. No, definitely.
It's interesting that also there's a C in the middle, which stands for Charles, but also stands for Camilla, with these two, with the little robin. And is that a wren? What kind of bird is that? I'm not very good at birds.
I think it's a wren.
In the middle there, beside the strawberries and the pinks and the violets. And the columbine there is so sweet. It's a very beautiful invitation. So let's look at the chart for this. I'll get that up. The chart for this coronation and how that relates to the invitation.
Yeah, and it's important to say, I think, that the coronation is happening the day after an eclipse, and sometimes people go, oh, why is it happening near an eclipse? Surely that's not a good thing. But the eclipses have always been about the leaders of this country. It's the king is the sun, the moon is the queen, and eclipses, they often show the sort of rise and fall of leaders. And this royal family in particular, as we were saying earlier, they do everything on eclipses. They do everything on eclipses. He was born on one. There's births, there's marriages, there's divorces, there's deaths on eclipses. So, that just kind of is perfect symbolism in a way, that again, this important event is happening on the back of a Taurus Scorpio eclipse. He has the sun in Scorpio, he has the moon in Taurus. So he's very in tune with what's happening out in the universe as well.
And of course, the queen was a sun Taurus.
Yeah.
And this is the queen is dead, long live the king. That's
Yeah.
what we're doing. So this is the burial, the final burial of the queen. Goodbye. And the beginning of his, this is his coronation at this moment.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Leo is rising. And of course,
Sign, royal sign.
I do notice that Lilith in Leo is rising too. So there is a dark fairy at the feast. I would
Okay.
suggest, like as in Sleeping Beauty, there is a something at the feast that is a fairy that brings some kind of darkness to that. Chiron is on the midheaven, which is interesting because Charles himself is very chironic. He's got a Sun Chiron conjunction, I think. And Jupiter is at the top of the chart as well.
Yeah, and it's noticeable that it's a very full 10th house. The sun is the ruler of the Leo ascendant in Taurus and heading to Uranus. There'll be a Sun-Uranus conjunction. I mean, so Uranus is pulled into this eclipse on the 5th of May as well. And I think, that Sun-Uranus, I think he does have an alternative side. Sun King, Uranus, all things kind of unconventional in a way. I think there is a side of him, and with this invitation and the associations with the green man, I think he is trying to bring something new, different, alternative to his kingship as well. So fascinating that the Sun Uranus is there.
Yeah, and I notice also that Juno is there. So Juno is in Gemini. Juno is the sign of queenship, so to speak, of the queen. And of course, Camilla is part of this in a way that we haven't seen. She's the other C with this. And maybe she's also, there's the Lilith situation. We'll see what happens with that.
Well,
but
yeah, I was going to say that, Juno in Gemini and Lilith, it immediately makes me think of his other wife, Diana.
Yeah, the ghost of Diana there. Yes, perhaps. I was thinking that also this is a shared regality, Gemini, it's the twins. It's him and her. And there's something about that that's quite powerful. Also, the moon's in Scorpio, which is good for him, right? It's on his he's got moon at 0 Taurus and sun at 22 Scorpio in his, so the moon's on his sun. So the other thing that is the mystical side of being a king, of course, is that he's marrying the land. This is a marriage between him and the country. So we'll see if this entire mystical combination, we'll see how that works.
Yeah, see how it plays out, whether it'll stay hidden or be more mainstream or out in the world.
Well, this is desperate. We're in a desperate straits at the moment in terms of the water in this country, which we've talked about on this before. And we need someone to come and fix that because it's been horribly polluted in the last 5 years or so. Under this government, there's been no holding back on pumping sewage into our water systems, and it's had a terrible effect on the environment.
Yeah, just not taking care of the land. It's
there's been no husbandry of the land.
It's really
husbandry is the word, isn't it?
Yeah, and who knows what Charles can do, but I like this coronation chart, and I like what his statement behind it. And I do wonder whether he was, how much he was involved with choosing the date, probably a lot. So also we need to talk a little bit about this eclipse, don't we, for what it means for, on a personal level.
The rest of us plebs.
The rest of us plebs, what does it mean? It's, it takes place on May the 5th. It's at 14 degrees, isn't it? 14 degrees Scorpio, Taurus, a lunar full moon eclipse, and resonates back to the eclipse on November the 8th, which was at 16 degrees. So, you often get these eclipse degrees kind of pairing up sometimes. So it may be that events in November are foreground again now, or it may be that something that, flourished around that first eclipse or was revealed around that first eclipse, maybe is a better word, is now back in focus again, or maybe completing in some way too. But yeah, I mean, for partnership, I mean, Taurus, Scorpio, it is about, lunar eclipses are often about relationships, partnership. I often think with lunar eclipses, you know, it's what triangle situation are you in? It's like you're in a situation where who wins, who loses. It's much more about people anyway. So for Taurus and Scorpio, this eclipse is really powerful for relationships, partnerships. Who's in charge? Who's the one with the power? And that may become more evident or be revealed during this eclipse.
Yeah. And I mean, this has also probably been a process that you've been going through.
Yeah.
And that's what I do feel, that there's this interesting sense of endings with that. The first eclipse on the 20th of April, and then that process is continuing here, but maybe less dramatically. It's got there's less drama to this eclipse than the previous one. And so because it's not as bold as the last eclipse, is it?
No.
But it's interesting also that a few days later, Jupiter moves into Taurus and is at 0 degrees of Taurus quite soon. So we have this eclipse that's across that Scorpio Taurus axis, and then we have Jupiter moving into Taurus. So there's so much activity at the moment. There's still so much activity across that Taurus Scorpio axis.
Yeah. But there's still a theme of kind of being in the dark a bit during this eclipse, because Mercury remains retrograde, doesn't it? And that the powerful turning point this month is when, Mercury turns direct on the 15th, Jupiter moves into Taurus on the 16th, and then there's going to be a new moon as well in Taurus on May 19th, again right at the end of the sign. So it really is worth treading slowly.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Treading slowly, seeing what comes out, what happens, and not being pushed into anything.
Yeah.
I think that things will be kind of revealed gradually at this point. It's it's a great time, though, having said all that, for finding out secrets, discovering that stuff in the attic. All of those Mercury retrograde things are even more exaggerated now.
Yeah, and particularly interesting that you're talking about that. Makes me think for Gemini, because Mercury is Gemini's planet. It's retrograde in Taurus, the most hidden sector of your horoscope. So time really to dig deep into things, dig deep into the past, look at what can, personal issues that may need some light on them slowly.
Yeah. For Libra as well, isn't it? Looking underneath that rock.
It's being willing to go into places that are dark. It's being willing to sort of move into the unknown, to explore things a bit more that have been hidden, and stuff that, may be taboo. It may be things that you've not wanted to go and look at. Also, I'd say, with Mercury retrograde, for Virgo, again, your planet, this is in your travel and study sector. So I would imagine it's a time not to rush into big decisions in those areas. There may be changes that come, there may be events that happen that mean you're wise to wait a little until the middle of the month before then saying yes to opportunities.
Yes, I mean, and also fantastic for study, for revising. This is the Uber eclipse stroke Mercury retrograde season for revision. And from, and when I say revising, I also mean editing your own house, for example, getting rid of stuff, throwing things away. Be careful on not throw away anything that is precious to you, but throwing away the trash. I feel this eclipse season is very much about throwing away the trash, also getting ready for this new phase when Jupiter goes into Taurus, which is going to be a big deal, by the way, because Jupiter and Uranus are in Taurus. So we become very Taurian. And when it goes into Taurus, it immediately makes a hard aspect to Pluto.
Yep.
That's its greeting into Taurus is like, right here, I'm going to be really harsh with you, from Pluto. And Pluto is in Aquarius, the sign that's actually partially ruled by Uranus. So there's this whole story going on around Aquarian themes.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, that Jupiter walks straight into, and Jupiter, Taurus is a practical sign,
Mm.
wanting to have practical effects, and it may run up against Pluto in some way.
Mm. Yeah, and what a powerful time for Aquarius.
Hmm.
Jupiter, once it moves into Taurus, it'll be at the base of your horoscope, and having Pluto in your star sign square to it. I mean, it's a time really to dig back into the past. It's a time really to sort of, get a bigger picture on what's been happening with maybe family, with home, with legacy, with ancestry, and looking at where you're going with that, where you want to break free, move on. So it's a really powerful square that's coming up. I mean, that's exact on the 18th, the Jupiter-Pluto square. Real rush of powerful planetary energy, kind of blowing open, in a way, this eclipse and Mercury retrograde season, isn't it? It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really strong one. I would, be paying close attention at that on the 18th with that square. It's exact then, but it's as soon as Jupiter moves into Taurus, you're feeling it. And even these eclipses are the nodes are pretty much squaring that Pluto through this whole period that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So and that's considered a really important point in astrology, that 90-degree angle to the nodes.
Mm.
So there's a lot, and I'm back to my AI obsession, but there's a lot of change going around with that. And these stop start, and you may be able to see that personally in your life somehow. Where is it that you need to put the brakes on?
Yeah. Also, I mean, you've got to bring up the theme of money.
Yeah.
This Taurus Scorpio eclipse cycle has been, we've seen real swings in the financial sectors. And Jupiter Pluto, when you get those two planets together, it's often they're both about wealth. Jupiter's about abundance, wealth. Pluto's about hidden wealth. So it can be big wins, but big losses as well. So this could be a really powerful and important month for the money markets too, with a lot of, highs and lows going on. So particularly Aries, Libra, keep an eye on all of that, because Taurus, Scorpio is your money axis. But I mean, out in the world, what's happening will impact. So really notice what's happening in the money markets too, I would say.
Yeah, well, just banking in general, right? Or
Yeah.
money in general. Because one of the things that we've been wondering about all along is, what does Uranus and Taurus mean? Does it mean, that we're all going to do crypto? What, I don't know what. Turns out that's not the thing. Although you can't, cash is going. The departure of cash is incredible. I mean, I've been in my high street recently, and a lot of shops just don't take cash anymore. And that's the Uranus and Taurus, because Taurus is a very sort of cash sign. It's about money, actual money, whereas Scorpio is more the idea of money, I guess, or the investment. And this story about the banks and the big wobble that we had, this is not going away.
No.
This is not going away. It's not like, oh, it's all okay now. When Pluto goes back into Capricorn, there will be more about this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Pluto moving in and out of Capricorn until November 2024.
Yeah.
These Taurus Scorpio eclipses till later this year. But yeah, it's not going away. It's going to be, really significant shifts.
The whole structure of capitalism, basically, that's Pluto and Capricorn, is changing. And we don't know which way it's going yet, but these eclipses are part of that story, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And also, I suspect this Jupiter-Pluto square will be pivotal there too.
Yeah, definitely. And whether we know it or not, because sometimes these things are hidden.
Sometimes they are, and there's a real hidden theme to this month coming, isn't there? So
Yeah.
real hidden theme, secrets being revealed, but being willing to take a step back and, allowing yourself not to know. That's important advice for me, because I find that quite tough at times, but I think it is the way forward over the next few weeks. Exciting times coming up, Christina?
Yeah, and I was just finally, I was going to say about this spy scandal going on in the States at the moment. That's also part of this theme of espionage, things that are hidden, secrets coming out. And I think we'll see more things like this in the next 4 weeks, actually. And I wonder, Sal, is it a good time to bury your own secrets? Or should you be worried that they're going to be revealed? Because of course astrology can go either way, can't it? You can either end up in is it a good time to bury bad news, so to speak?
Well, both. If you bury secrets, you're always worried they're going to be revealed. That's the whole process of burying secrets, trying to bury the past. It can always come back. Maybe it comes back later at a different time. Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong advice on that, I don't think. You have to trust what's right for you.
Yeah, I would say don't have any secrets, but we all have secrets.
We all have secrets. We all have secret lives, says the Scorpio. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll see you next month.
Yep, we'll see you all next month. Thanks for listening in. Bye.
Bye.